I started my data analytics company. One of the biggest turning points happened about 4 years in. We got to the point where we started hiring people, managing people, and we got to a level we were $1 million or so in revenue. And it started to become a challenge. And so I just was doing a lot of reading and research, and I came across a book by Jack Stack. It was two books actually. One is called A Stake in the Outcome, and one is called The Great Game of Business. And I saw, after reading the books, that they had a conference coming up in St. Louis. It was like $2,000, which, we were making some money then, but it wasn't like we had extra money to spend on frivolous items. So, but after kind of thinking about it and talking it over with some of our partners, I decided it'd be a good investment to try to go to this to learn, those key things that a small business needs to grow and to scale. The Great Game of Business, Jack Stack, they built the company on the premise there was a company that was an engine remanufacturing company. It was part of Caterpillar, and basically they went in and bought that company out. And then it was all the different aspects of that, of trying to keep it afloat and grow the company, and how they gave employees stake in the outcome and that sort of thing. So I was kind of expecting to learn, how to market a company, grow a company, inspire employees, all that. And so when I got there, I was somewhat surprised, because they were talking about the top 5 problems of a business. The top 3 things were cash flow, inventory management, and safety. Well, me being in the data and analytics business, this is true if any of you guys are in digital business, or even if you're an agency selling your own time, you don't have cash flow usually. A lot of times you'll get money up front. You don't have inventory management. There's no inventory. It's digital, or it's your time. Well, you do have some inventory management in that you only have a limited amount of time. That's another subject. But you don't have true inventory management. And of course, short of arthritis and things, you don't really have anything in safety or paper cuts, I guess. The 4th and 5th aspects, were interesting to me, and that was employee engagement. And that was an issue I was having. How do you keep employees engaged, motivated, that sort of thing? And then financial literacy or transparency. You're sharing, the numbers, the goals, but when you're sharing goals and you put those out there, a lot of times there's a lot of skepticism around those goals. But I really did like the concept of the great game of business, treating business like a game. I hear a lot of these other business influencers and business YouTubers, that sort of thing. And I'm talking about like Alex Hormozy, Gary Vee. They focus on kind of you got to suffer. It's going to be hard. And I'm not saying it's not hard. I mean, there are times it's hard, but I focus much more on the game part, enjoying it. And I mean, I enjoy it. I know all my employees would not necessarily say that, but at times I think they do enjoy it. They enjoy the flexibility. They enjoy the accomplishments. And so we took a lot of those. Sorry, I'm right by a river here in downtown Denver. Boy, it's gorgeous here in Denver. I love how Denver has all these bike paths, walking trails. I think they have I heard at one point, 600 miles of them. So it just makes it nice to be able to come out and get some exercise for sure. Anyways, coming back from the Great Game of Business, I went out there with one aspect, and I realized as these other companies were out there talking about, safety and OSHA and managing inventory and all those things, cash flow, that's a big one. A lot of companies, I would say most companies, struggle with the cash flow issue. How do you bring sales in, start bringing revenue in, and manage your cash flow? Especially if you have inventory to manage, but even if you don't, it's still it's a big challenge. So anyway, I came back with this idea around employee engagement and financial transparency. And the financial transparency was one I'd often ask myself when I work for bigger companies. You'd always have a good year or whatever, your department, yourself, sales, whatever, and then they'd come in with some goal the next year that felt like they pulled it right out of their, where did they get this goal from? So the idea behind the financial transparency is you share those numbers. I mean, most people don't understand. I barely do a income statement and a balance sheet. I think I made a C. My only C in college was in accounting. So yeah, I still struggle with it. But there are key numbers within your income statement, balance sheet, that you can share, and you actually, by the book of a stake in the outcome, is you divvy out some of your key numbers and you assign those to different people that have influence over those numbers, and they track those numbers and they report on them on a regular basis. And the other thing that does is it really engages your employees. That alone is going to engage your employees, but it also helps with your planning. So you're going to do bottom-up planning, so they know those basic numbers, they can forecast, and then come up with a plan. And so at the end of the year, when you start planning for the next year, that's bottom up. The employees they know what the numbers are, they know what their department's doing, what it's capable of, based on the resources they have, and then they supply those, and then you build that all together to come up with your goal for the year. We've been much more accurate in planning doing that approach versus just coming up with a number, a revenue number that we want to hit, or a sales goal, profit goal, revenue per employee, whatever metric we want to use, and then have everybody try to conform and figure out how they can get there. Whoa, a little duck right there. I want some food. So we started going through this, and we did worry about kind of the challenges of financial transparency. I mean, if everybody's seeing all our numbers, well, they're going to know how much money we're making. Is that going to make them, ask for bigger raises, or, be envious or jealous? And I'm not saying that hasn't happened at all, but I think it's been fairly limited. They understand that there's risk involved in running the company. We have to set money aside each year, and thank goodness we did, because there've been some, pretty lean years when, the 2008 crisis happened, that sort of thing. The last part of that is we wanted to tie incentives, compensation, to the outcomes. So we came up with a profit sharing program. In some cases, and actually the book recommends actual equity in the company, and for a variety of reasons that was not going to work for us, but did come up with a way that we could take a certain amount of profit, and we tiered it in such a way that everyone could get on board and know where we stood, and hopefully worked harder and felt a stake in the outcome, actually. Now, another part of the great game of business, which we did it some early on, we haven't done as much lately, but I actually do recommend doing mini games, I think they call it. And so basically what that is if you identify a certain number that you want to get an improvement on, say in a short period of time, 30 to 90 days, not really more than 90 days, then you identify what that number is, you make sure you can track it, and then you come up with a theme for it, and you come up with a team, and they come up with incentives, a scoreboard, and you roll that out, and you track that. And again, it's kind of a sprint to see if I got this particular number, I'm trying to get sales up by X number of units for this quarter. If you put an emphasis on it, put a game around it, have a scoreboard attached to it, have an incentive, then you can affect that number, and it's a great success. We did it quite a few times. I remember one of the worst ones. It was during the 2008 crisis, and we sell a lot of data analytics into the financial world, housing world. I'm actually here in Denver at Housing Wire right now, and it was during that crisis. We had one game, and we called it Mount Everest. And so each person, I can't remember what the metric was, but it was around number of units, or I can't remember exactly, but whatever it was, everybody had the Mount Everest, and you had a little mountaineer that was climbing the mountain. Well, we were unfortunately at that time, we're having to lay people off. And so one of our guys, who actually is still with us, he would take each person and turn them upside down on the mountain when they were laid off. So it hasn't always been rainbows and roses, but anyway, that was one of the bad parts of the mini game. But it's the struggle you go through sometimes when you're running a business and the economy goes south and you lose 2/3 of your business in about 3 months. And what do you do? I remember another one we did where I got a mannequin, and I can't remember the theme, but it was Mission Impossible theme, and it's kind of under the, remember the Mission Impossible scene where Tom Cruise is like, I think it's the first one where he's hovering right over the floor. So we had a chart on the wall, and we got this mannequin dressed in black, hung it from the ceiling, and we would lower it as we got closer and closer to the goal, and so that was kind of a fun one as well. So these books are kind of old. I mean, they're, again, that was 25 years ago. Stake in the Outcome, Great Game of Business, but I think they're still relevant. Again, the key points in it are how do you engage your employees? And the idea is you engage your employees with financial transparency and giving them a stake in the outcome. So you're revealing some of your key numbers to them, and I'm not talking about salaries. You can, I mean, they recommend it, but I don't know if you have to do salaries, but certainly if you want to do profit, that sort of thing. If you give your employees access to that information, the financial information, you tie their compensation to those key metrics, so they feel like they are have some control and can feel some accomplishment around those. You'll get more engaged employees, and you'll see your results increase and improve. It'll run the company more fun. Make people feel like they're more involved, and it won't feel hard or as hard, and you'll have more owners, quote unquote, with a stake in the outcome, make your job easier and make you finish well.